This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
The panel and the house at large. My name is Ogwang Daniel from Team Negative. Erratic weather change complicates food production, leading to unsustainable food production as humiliated. Yes or no?
Pardon.
Erratic weather change complicates food production, unsustainable food production as it's humiliated. Yes or no?
No.
Erratic change in weather as a depiction of temperature variations. Yes or no?
No.
Can unsustainable food production succeed by climate change? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No.
Land is a fixed asset. Yes or no?
Yes.
Jubilations comes when climate is steady, leading to food production. Yes or no?
Yes.
Did you say land subdivision causes a dilapidated food production through climate change?
No.
Land fragmentations is not the only depiction of unsustainable food production. Yes or no?
No.
Did your second point resolve the status quo?
Yes.
Is land subdivision being executed in all regions?
Yes.
Will you address climate change and boost food production?
Yes.
Is climate change the main cause of land subdivision in the country?
No.
The panel and the house at large. In tonight's debate, Team Negative wins it because in tonight's debate, we presented the COP resolution, of which in tonight's debate, I asked the cross-examiner from Team Affirmative, will they address climate change and boost food production? They said yes. Panel, in tonight's debate, we see that climate change is the main cause of low food production in the country. Not only that, panel, according to the COP21, which our first speaker made mention of, it is being discussed that climate change has to be resolved first to help boost the problem of low food production. In tonight's debate also, we asked them land is a fixed asset, of which they said yes. Then if land is a fixed asset, agriculture is carried on land. And when it's carried on land, we see that there are other factors that lowers the food production, of which Team Affirmative is talking of in tonight's debate. So panel, we see that we need to address climate change, which is our main point in tonight's debate, to fight against erratic change in weather. Not only that, in tonight's debate, I asked them, land subdivision causes dilapidated food production through climate change, of which they said yes. Panel, we see that land subdivision is not the only cause of downfall of food production, but there are other factors, of which we have laid down to be climate change and poor farming factors, like overcropping and intercropping. Not only that, panel, in tonight's debate, we also asked them, erratic weather change is a depiction of temperature variations. They said yes. They say no, panel. So we stand as Team Negative to win tonight's debate because of the cases we have given as erratic change in weather and temperature variations, because they are the major cause of the downfall in the food production we have right now, panel. Panel, as Team Negative, we win the debate. Thank you.
Did you know that sustainable food production has greatly decreased by 11% for the last 14 years?
No.
Are you aware that land subdivision is the leading cause of unsustainable food production?
No.
Do you know that if those fragmented land were consolidated and mechanized, much food would be produced?
No.
Do you know that when people subdivide the land, it affects the ecosystem, which would purify air to avoid climate change?
No.
What is the percentage of the climate change for the last few years and the current, of which is leading to unsustainable food production in Uganda?
Pardon?
what is the percentage of climate change for the last few years and the current, which is leading to unsustainable food production in Uganda?
It is because of the industries that are emitting harmful fumes to the atmosphere that eradicates our climate change, bringing a lot of global warming that does not favor agriculture.
Did you know that the number of people who own 1 acre of land has declined by 16%?
No.
Isn't land subdivision usage of land? But on the other hand, do you know that it affects the land at large?
No.
Do you believe that the existence of land subdivision affects the land in such a way that one is unable to produce the food that can lead to its own sustainability?
No.
The panel are large. My opponent came here and said he does not know that agriculture is the backbone of Uganda. So I simply just want to tell him that he does not know what he's talking about, because he's arguing here that agriculture is not the backbone of Uganda. But all of us knows that the climate actually based on the agriculture, because we know when we plant trees in that large scale, it's the one that contributes onto the agriculture, onto the weather change. And not only that, it causes biodiversity, of which they actually came here claiming here that it affects the weather. Yeah, of course, biodiversity leads to climate change, which supports weather. Actually, biodiversity simply means like this in simple terms. When we actually have that large scale of land, it actually enables us to have a greener pasture or a greener climate. For example, in places where we have good climate and good environment, there can be that good production of food in that large environment. And another one, he came here and said that he's not aware that land subdivision is the leading cause of unsustainable food production. Now, where are you going to grow your crops? Because you cannot come to me and you say that only an acre of land can manage to pay fees, can manage to provide for you food for the whole year. Actually, even though you are relying on the weather, remember that the Uganda actually based on agriculture as the backbone. Because stop being semi-simple, dominant, dominant person and just rely on what you know. Because all of us here, we know that the main aim of us getting food is just as a large land. And again, he came and said here that he does not know that when the fragmented land is consolidated and magnetized, my food will be produced. Yeah, of course, when land is actually brought together in simple terms, we are able to gain much food, because a person who actually has 16 acres of land produces enough food, and a person who only has 2 acres produce little food. I rest my case. Thank you very much.
Key things to note. A value resolution is not a debate that is looking at solutions. That if we do this, we intend to do this, we are going to do this, we are going to do this. No. A value debate is looking at the values of what have happened in society. Not what the government tries to do to engage on the issue of climate change. Maybe if companies do this, then also they said land subdivision, but mainly it was on the side of team negative. You even ask them, what are you doing? What are you doing? No. A value debate, we are debating about things that are already in the current status quo, not what we intend to do to improve. That's why you say value debate is not looking for the solutions, but you're looking at what is in the present status quo. Then, for a debate also like this one, team affirmative, we were not just interested in what are the causes of land subdivision. Then even this side, what are the causes of climate change? Yes, I know you could use some of the causes of land subdivision. You may use some of the causes of climate change to explain to us why you believe that your standpoint or your alternative is majorly to be blamed for unsustainable agriculture. So now this one calls for, don't just bring arguments and you throw it out to the judges. Always draw a causal link between what you're talking about to its impact. You are meant to draw a causal link. That no, if we are talking about high population, the high population is going to mean that there is going to be a lot of land subdivision. Meaning most of the land is going to be used for settlement or urbanization rather than agriculture. Likewise to this side, if you're now talking about the carbon emission, maybe you'll talk about the impact of the carbon emission towards the changes in maybe the weather patterns. But now these are things that were now mainly brought in the second speech. They told you that as a first speaker you have a mandate of making sure that by the time you leave the podium, the judges are totally and fully persuaded by what your entire team case is all about. Now, on a bad, if now the second speaker does not fulfill the same, then what are you going to be left with as a team?
Thank you for this debate. Now, for resolutions such as value, and for resolutions such as the one that we had here today, one that required us for a team affirmative to say that no, it's land subdivision that is the leading cause of unsustainable food production, and team negative saying no, it is actually climate change. Now, for a resolution such as that, you need to actually now draw what Judge Solomon was talking about, a causal link that land subdivision is actually the leading cause of unsustainable food production, and draw a causal link between land subdivision and unsustainable food production. Then draw a causal link between climate change and unsustainable food production. Now, what do I mean by that? To begin with, let me begin with what you come up and talk about. Now, team negative, just because you have a burden of rebuttal, it does not mean that you have to engage team affirmative on every single argument that they bring about. They start by bringing up an argument. I think it was in characterization. They start up by bringing up an argument of, no, you know what, if we are to look at land subdivision, the leading cause of land subdivision is actually what? Increase in population. Now, just because I told you you have to rebut everything, you shouldn't come up here and then you start negating and rebutting and saying, you know, no, actually, the leading cause of land subdivision is not high population. It is rather the high fertility rate. Do you understand that? You are only supposed to engage them on things, because what they were supposed to talk about, they were supposed to talk about land subdivision and sustainable food production. You're supposed to talk about climate change and sustainable food production. The causes of land subdivision are entirely irrelevant in this particular debate. Now, moving on. What was I meaning by causal link? Team negative, first of all. When you come up and you say that various countries are fighting to reduce the global warming rates from 2% to, let's say, the 1% that you're talking about, that does not mean, so what if the companies are actually reducing the global warming rates? Do you understand that? Just because the global warming rates are high, it does not mean that it is affecting. Okay, it affects food production. However, you have to draw a causal link that, you know what, you giving me mere evidence that companies are fighting against global warming. It is not evidence enough that global warming is leading to climate change, which is affecting food production. Am I making sense? So you have to draw a causal link. Same thing goes to team affirmative. When you come up here and you tell us that, you know what, land subdivision is very high, it does not mean that that land subdivision is specifically affecting food production. You have to come up and draw a causal link between that land subdivision and unsustainable food production. Now, the other argument that maybe I don't know whether you just forget to define unsustainable food production, which you actually end up defining. But the word sustainable is a very key word in our resolution today. It is something that you do not pay attention to, both teams. Now, moving on. I'm talking about team affirmative. When you come up here and then you quote that various people are saying that actually it is land subdivision that is affecting food production. You see those quotes, they are beautiful quotes. However, those quotes do not quantify the impact of land subdivision to unsustainable food production. Am I making sense? Now, moving on. Team affirmative, you come up and tell us that, you know what, food production is reducing by 11% due to land subdivision. Now, that is very good. That is a very good statistic. However, how? Do you understand? Team negative comes up and quantifies for you, and they come up and they tell you that, you know what, when there is actually a change in weather patterns, this happens. When there is an increase in temperatures, this happens. Now, drawing back to what Judge Solomon was telling us, you do not engage them on these two things. They give you 2 points of arguments. You do not engage them on weather patterns. You do not engage them in changing temperatures. Now, that is something that you leave out and you do not rebut.
For both teams here, you need to learn to use a lot of your time making your case, not doing things that are a little bit peripheral. So for example, in this debate, it is not important for either team to prove to us that agriculture is the backbone of Uganda, right? We know that. That one we know. Number two, it is not important for us either to prove to us the causes of climate change or the causes of land subdivision. We are already in a state where we have land subdivision. We're already in a state where we have climate change. The question is, which of the two now is the greatest cause of unsustainable food production? So that's where your statistics should go. That's where your case should be made, right? So if you take 3 of your minutes to prove to us that we rely on agriculture, it employs a lot of people, and these are the causes of land subdivision, and then use 1 minute to tell us that because we use small land, we cannot mechanize, we cannot have biodiversity, we cannot practice commercial farming, you're not doing well on your job, right? So similarly, if you take a lot of time to prove to us that there's climate change, that this climate change is caused by these are by maybe a rise in temperature, that this climate change results into rise in temperature and changing of weather patterns, and you use a few minutes to tell us how changing of weather patterns affects food production, you're doing less at your job. So going forward, please use most of your time to make a case on what the debate needs. So for example, the affirmative team, you had very good arguments, like they have highlighted biodiversity, ineffective way to mechanize, to use mechanization in farming, the impractical way of carrying out commercial farming. But unfortunately, all these arguments were mentioned and simply mentioned in the last bits of your speech. You have taken a lot of time to explain irrelevant things, and in the last bits of your speech, you're speaking, you're now bringing up the points that we need to hear in the debate. So that was a problem. To what extent is subdivision affecting production in Uganda? The same question comes up from the affirmative team concerning climate change. We expect people who should weigh the debate, the third speakers, to analyze and say, this is how much subdivision affects production, and this is how much climate change affects production. Of the two, the one that has maybe a wider range of coverage, maybe gross effects, is this after comparison. Then sustainability comes in. You want to say, of the effects of land division and of the effects of climate change, which one will last longer, and as such, which one is more sustainable? Because in this debate, truth is, both of them contribute to low food production. The question is, which one contributes more? Therefore, you must analyze both arguments to prove that your side is greater. So if you improve in those two areas, I feel that you will have a better debate. I gave both of you 14 for style. I gave both of you 23 for content. I deferred in strategy, and that is because the affirmative team did not engage the negative team on the alternative. I gave the affirmative team 23 and the negative team 25, making it 60 for the affirmative team and 62 for the negative team. It is a unanimous decision, 3-0, that the negative team wins the debate. Thank you.